Welcome to the Real Estate, Real Success podcast, where we talk about key business successes and lessons learned along the way in the hopes of inspiring brokerage owners and managers to find new ways to grow their business. I'm Chiyoko Kakino. In this episode, we're going to talk about the importance of culture and training in building a successful brokerage. I'm lucky to be joined by Cameron Van Klei. He is the broker owner of Century 21 Creekside, headquartered out of Chilliwack, British Columbia. Cameron, thank you so much for being with us today. I wanted to start off, Cameron, by you giving us a little bit of background on yourself and your journey to owning your own brokerage. Can you do that?
Oh man, what do you want to know?
Just tell us your story.
Tell the story of like why I'm a broker or why I own a real estate company at this point.
Just give us a little bit of background on your career, where you started, what got you interested in possibly owning a brokerage. Just give us that little bit of a background on yourself.
So, we'll start, 5 years old. I grew up in a construction family and basically had to go to the job site all the time. I always had to go sweep out a house before soccer practice. I had to work every evening, weekend, summer holidays. And so when I graduated, I thought I never want to do construction ever again. And then I went to university for a semester and that wasn't for me either. But I'll never forget, I was on the job site. I was digging a trench in the pouring rain in Chilliwack, which is cold. And this white car showed up, a fancy car. And there was an umbrella that popped out and a girl in high heels and she tiptoed past me. And I didn't even know what she was doing, but I knew she was a realtor. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to get out of the rain and I want to make money. And so I signed up my real estate course that day, and that was back in 2006. And that kind of started my real estate journey. But in the process, I had played a lot of sports. I played university volleyball, and I actually was coaching basketball at a local high school for a bunch of years. And in that process, I actually learned that it's more fun coaching basketball and teaching kids how to be young men than it ever was playing basketball. And that was kind of my start into a real estate brokerage, where I'm like, I actually have way more fun coaching and teaching realtors than I ever did selling real estate myself. So that kind of got me to where I am today.
So when did you join Century 21?
So it feels like forever already. I started back 2015. I think September 2015 is when we opened our doors for the very first time.
All right. So when you opened your doors, was it just yourself? Was it a startup brokerage? Did you have a couple of agents that joined you? What did that look like back then?
Yeah, I was a 29-year-old kid ready to light the world on fire. And so, of course, you think everyone's going to run over and start with you, but it started with me and my assistant and actually two other realtors in the office that I was in before. And when we started, we didn't even have a location yet. We literally worked out of the den of my house. So we set up 4 desks in a row and we all just started working out of it. And it was a fun journey since then.
So Cameron, you and I started around the same time, because I started about 6.5 years ago too. And Century 21 has changed so much in 6.5 years. I personally think we are the best kept secret in real estate. Can you tell me what you think some of the biggest changes have been since you joined?
Yeah, there's actually been a lot of changes. It's funny, when we opened in Chilliwack, everyone knew what Century 21 was, but it had been an old brand. And so when I first started telling people hey, I opened a Century 21, you should join us. They're like, well, do we have to wear a gold jacket? And so there had been one in Chilliwack years and years before. But in the last 6.5 years, there's been a lot of change. Branding is fantastic. A lot of agents who join us are excited just because the branding looks good and it's professional. There's a great online university. There's lots of great templates, and there's a lot of really good resources that are actually up to date and relevant right now, which is nice.
Yes, you're right, Cameron. There's been so much change in the look of the brand overall. It just looks fresh and contemporary and relevant to younger agents. So that's great. So let's talk now about your growth, because you just said, you opened your brokerage, you're working out of your den, you had 4 desks that you're all working at. So you, your assistant, and 2 agents. So that was back in 2015. Now you have, and I just looked up these numbers, you have 110 agents. You are the 18th largest office by production in the Century 21 world, which of course, as you know, it's 14,250 offices in 86 countries. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Plus you have one of the top global 21 agents at your brokerage. So gosh, that your growth has been significant. And so give me an idea how that compares in your market? Like people, might not be familiar with Chilliwack B.C. So how does that compare in your market?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I actually pinch myself. Like when you hear that out loud, it's actually kind of a crazy thing to hear. Yeah, so we're from a small town, so hopefully I can inspire some small town brokers out there. I mean, our population is about 100,000 if you round up right now. But our board's small. We have about 370 members on our board, and so that's my total recruiting pool. I don't really have anything outside of that. And so, I mean, we're at 113 agents, I think, today technically. Yeah, it's a small pool to pick from, but we can do giant numbers. Like I think we're over $1 billion in real estate sold already this year. So it's a lot of fun.
Wow. So I love that you corrected the numbers, 113. So you hired 3 people three people joined you since I looked at those numbers a couple of weeks ago. So again, sorry, you said you had 375 realtors in your market or members in your market?
Yeah, roughly that many. Yeah.
So you have 113 out of 375. That's absolutely fantastic. So that I guess puts you number 1 in your marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, we check the stats just to make sure that we're accurate. And so, I mean, there had been a brokerage in town that was number 1 for as long as I can remember. And as of Q3 of this year, we've done 190 million more in real estate sales than they have, and about 300 more transactions. And that was up to Q3, so it'll be a lot more by the end of the year. So we're by far the number 1 brokerage in our town now too.
Well, you know what? That makes me feel, extra excited because Cameron, I remember the first time that I met you. I came out to Chilliwack. We went to Earl's in Chilliwack for lunch. And, I think that was back in 2017. I remember you said you had 30 agents at that time and that you said, Chioko, in 5 years, I'm going to have 100 agents. I'm going to be the number 1 the number 1 brokerage in Chilliwack. And here you stand, in less than 5 years, by far the number 1 brokerage in Chilliwack. So again, Cameron, I'm so proud of you because a lot of times, when you sit down with someone and they have, a vision's great, but you've like overachieved your vision. So again, congratulations. I think that's absolutely wonderful. So what do you think some of the key ingredients have been to your growth?
Oh man, that's a hard question. I'll back that up a little bit. So I remember selling real estate back in 2008. My first year was 2007, so the market was super busy. I thought it was God's gift to real estate because I could sell a lot of houses in a good market. Then the market crashed and I was the worst realtor ever. I had no concept how to sell houses. And I remember going to my broker back then. I said, I don't know how to sell a house. And he goes, I don't know what to tell you. Try the CD. And he gave me this old Tom Hopkins CD, cheeseball sales guy from the 90s who most people have never heard of. But that was kind of my moment in real estate where I was like, oh, like this business requires like education and learning and being good at your craft. And so that's kind of been the major push in my growth of a brokerage. I know before I even opened the brokerage, I read several books on how to start a brokerage and how to run a brokerage. And I do a lot of reading and a lot of educating to kind of facilitate that growth.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about, some of the like, what do you pride yourself on at your brokerage? Like, is there, you talk a lot about education and you yourself, do a lot of reading and stuff like that. So I guess education is kind of a key component to your growth and the success of your brokerage.
Yeah, my 2 foundations, and I learned this the more I do this, is you can only be known for so many things. Like you can't do everything. And so everything in our brokerage runs around culture or education. If it doesn't have to do with being better educated or better culture, we try to avoid it. We stick with those 2 things.
Great. Well, let's talk about those 2 things. But before I do that, again, you've gone from, yourself and 2 other agents to 113 agents. What are you doing to recruit agents to your business? Can you tell us, some of the tricks of the trade that you're doing to attract agents to your brokerage?
You want all the secrets right now, hey?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's a lot of things we do. It's not just one thing. I would say one principle we use is the word FOMO, so the fear of missing out. It's one of the greatest motivators of people. And so we actually share everything that we do in our brokerage And so any of my competition, they actually know what we're doing. And so we will print our education schedule, and we'll share on social media what events we're doing and what things we have coming up. If we're going hiking or going on a run or raising money or office meetings, those things all go online. We also do a newsletter to our local real estate board. And so every month, the realtors in our brokerage and outside of our brokerage, they're getting an up-to-date list of like who's joined our office and what our new stats are at and what company events we have coming up, so that other agents know what we're doing and feel like if they're not a part of it, they're probably going to miss out. And then we're sneaky too, because when people open up those emails, if they click on them 5, 6, 7 times, then they're a candidate for me to make a phone call to and say like, hey, are you interested in our office? So that's one thing we do. You want to keep going? You want to know all of it?
I want to know all of them.
Oh man. Obviously education is a huge thing. So I really pride myself in having the best education and the most relevant education. So if you're in our office, every Friday, we're going to have an office meeting from 9:45 to 10. The first 15 minutes is going to be local information, listings and how to do multiple offers and some of those things. But my last half hour is always structured education, like relevant education. So how do you get better at closing? How do you build trust? Learning the anatomy of a house, prospecting, how to build your business, how to tax plan. And so I've been doing that since day one every Friday. We have great turnout. And then what I do is I invite, anywhere from 4 to 7 agents from other brokerages. I invite them out to an office meeting so they can experience our culture. And often we used to, not as much anymore, but they would just keep coming to office meetings. Like, hey guys, at some point you need to sign up. You can't just come to our office meetings and be a part of another brokerage endlessly. That works great. One of the other things I learned, this is like a John Cheplack thing. He's a great real estate coach in North America, is it's all about kind of the heart and how you can help people. And so a lot of the times I'll actually take an experienced agent or a newer agent out from another brokerage and I'll take them for coffee. Lunch takes way too long, so I'll do a coffee and I'll say like, hey, tell me your story. I actually care about your story and who you are. And how can I help you in real estate? Like, do you need some coaching? Do you need some help? Do you need some tips? This is what I do. And we have just a good candid conversation for half an hour. And I don't even bring up Century 21. Nothing branded, nothing pushy. I actually just legitimately want to know who they are and how they're doing and if I can help. And often that turns into them asking me like, hey, how can I be a part of your office? Or asking other questions about our office. And it works fantastic. So.
Well, that's such a good idea to start to build that rapport about, how you can provide value to an agent, not just the brand, 'cause the brand, of course, has, a ton of value, but what value can you bring as a brokerage owner? So I think that's great. And just a question too about, inviting agents from, your competitors to your office meetings. How do you decide who to invite? Do you just, if they click on, the email 5 or 6 times, you pick up the phone and maybe that conversation leads to an invitation to your office meeting, or how do you decide that?
Yeah, and that's why I'm jealous of people in bigger boards. Like if I'm in Vancouver, Toronto, I'm like, oh, I could just recruit way more than I can do now. But I have my hit lists. And of course, you can't bug someone too often. So I actually just write out my list of like my top candidates of who I want to be in my office. And they'll get a text message from me just saying, hey, this is the office meeting this week. We're, week 1 of our success series. We're going to teach you how to manage your database or something like that. And we'll text 6 of them. And then if they don't respond, then I'll text the next 6. But I probably hit them once every quarter or something like that.
Great. Well, that's excellent. So thank you for sharing those recruiting tips with the rest of the people that are listening. Now I want to talk a little bit about your 2 principles for success. As you mentioned, it's education and culture. So let's start with education. And I know you have a philosophy, as I'm going to call it #always learning, because you're always using that on your social media posts.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Which I notice. So why do you think education is so important in building a successful brokerage? You talked a little bit about that, but tell me again, why is education and training so important?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think because that was my aha moment in real estate back in 2008, where I knew that if I wanted to be good at this business and go somewhere, I actually had to be learning what I was doing. And I think that's so undertaught in our industry. Our industry is so full of rules and regulations and don't do this and don't do that. And you better not think about this. And I actually think that agents are better if they don't have commission breath. So if they're actually good at their job, they won't get themselves into trouble. And so if you're always learning and always educating yourself, I think you're going to be the best version of who you can be. And that's a big deal to me. So.
Well, that's excellent. So you do a lot of training. What are some of your most popular training sessions? Like, I'm sure there's ones that are way more popular than others. Tell me a little bit about the topics and stuff that you talk about, you train on.
Yeah, I mean, we should break it up into two things now is what we do. So
Okay.
my poor agents that have been with me for 5.5 years now, they don't want to hear the same thing over and over, but you need to teach listing presentations over and over, and you need to teach buyer presentations over and over. And so we have our Friday meetings where we teach relevant things, obviously, but then I actually have courses where we do it like once a week now for all of our new agents. So we reteach how to close and how to do a listing presentation. But if I jump into like my favorite series of the year, we're actually starting one like next week. It's called our Success Series. And too many realtors are like bumblebees. They're like at a new flower every 10 minutes and they can't just stay on the same flower. And I understand it because I'm a realtor too. And so the Success Series that we do really like breaks down like, where does your business actually come from? How do you set up your systems around that and then set your goals for the next year so that you're not always trying to do something new. You actually just attack the things that work, and it helps you immensely.
So it's kind of like business planning for real estate agents.
Yeah. Another favorite one we do is we do anatomy of a house. And so I bring realtors to a job site. And so we walk through a house, we put on our hard hats and our vests, and I show them all the different pieces of a house at different stages. We walk through land developments, we show them how roads are built. So then they actually have a working knowledge of what houses look like.
So how do you decide that those are some of your training topics? Like, how do you decide on your training topics? How do you decide that one was important for real estate agents? Is it just through trial and error, and these are the ones that you get good feedback on, or how do you decide the topics?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm probably not the smartest person in the world. And so I think about like, hey, so what do I wish someone would have taught me? That wasn't even good English there. I wish someone would have taught me blank. And then that's where I start from. And then I read a lot of books. And so I'm always learning when I'm reading these books, and you're like, oh, that's something that I should have taught someone, or I was already naturally doing this in my business, but I should teach other agents how to implement this. And so between what I wish I would have known and books teaching me things, that's the basis of my education.
Right. So I think you had mentioned that you have your Friday office meetings every week, that you dedicate a component of your office meeting towards some sort of training session. And then you have, I think you said that you train new agents, did you say on a weekly basis, and some of the basics?
Yeah, so I mean, sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say, how frequently are you holding these training sessions? Are you doing it twice a week, or sometimes some weeks are you doing extra courses, or how frequent are you holding these training sessions?
Yeah, if I look at it from a macro perspective throughout the year, we probably run, I would say, about 70 education seminars through our brokerage. So I would say 40 of 52 weeks, you're going to get our weekly meetings. And then for my new agents, we're going to run little series for them to kind of get the basic training out of the way so they understand how to start their business. And then on top of that, we actually do national coaching programs too. So we'll do a Brian Buffini course or a Jared James course. We're going to do a Ryan Serhant course coming up in January here. And so it's a mixture of like what new agents need, what's relevant in the market today, and what national coaches have to teach us. So yeah, and pretty much every realtor that's joined our office has increased their business immensely. It's actually mind blowing what some of them have done. So.
Do you track that, just to make sure that, all the training that you're doing is making a difference, or how do you track all that?
Oh, we're big trackers in the background. We're kind of dorky. That is a hard thing to track, but in our Success Series that we run every year, we actually give our agents like a little workbook. And so they do the tracking, and then they actually bring it to me so they can see how much they've increased year over year, what category of their business has increased year over year. And if they bring it to me, I'm cheesy, they get a $5 Starbucks gift card, which can almost buy you a latte these days. And so then I'm not telling them how to track, but they're doing the tracking and are being rewarded for it. And then I get to see what my agents are doing. We have an agent in our office when she joined us 6 years ago, like her family had to pay her real estate dues. And she's making over $1 million a year now in our office. And so there's some really cool stories that happen. Well,
and that must be so satisfying to you to watch these people, just just grow in their careers, right? And be successful. That's probably, as I'm sure as an instructor, as a trainer, like that's probably your biggest sense of satisfaction.
By far. Yeah.
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 So these training sessions, let's talk a little bit more, because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of listeners out there that are interested in, exactly how to maybe put together a program like this. How long do your training sessions go? Like what's the good time frame? Because I know sometimes if they're too short, you're not learning enough. If they're too long, you lose focus of your participants. So how long do they go?
Yeah. So I try and cap them at 45 minutes period. It'll be an hour meeting, but 15 minutes will be, talking and chatting and drinking coffee. And then 45 minutes of structured learning. Beyond that, realtors are busy. We got stuff to do. And so to say, hey, stay in my training seminar for 4 hours, no one wants to pay attention. So 45 minutes, like hard stop. I want to be respectful of their time. And so if I say it's going to end at 10, it's going to end at 10 o'clock. It's not fair to them to end it at 10:05 or 10:10. Sometimes I feel like I'm on a roll and I want to keep talking, but you got to give them the parameters. So it's 45 minutes.
That's great.
Yeah.
And are you finding success are you doing all these training sessions in the virtual world over Zoom, or are you doing them in person? Are you doing a hybrid? What is seeming to be successful for you these days?
Yeah, I'll back up the question a little bit too. I think I forgot to mention is like I put a lot of time into these education seminars too. So 45 minutes will probably take me 8 to 10 hours of time, plus my staff making my notes look better. So I'll give them a rough draft of notes after 8 to 10 hours, and they'll turn it into a PowerPoint and make it look better. Because our agents deserve good content and relevant content. And then to catch you up into like what our meetings look like. I strongly believe we're better together. And so when we are in a room of people, communication is higher, people can raise their hands, things are dealt with quickly, answers are dealt with quickly. And so, we've been in this pandemic, and so you're trying to make everything work. And so I bug the heck out of my agents. I want you in person, but we still do everything via Zoom. So if we have 100 agents, we can have 20 of them on Zoom and 30 of them in an office meeting. We can, make sure everyone can attend.
So you're doing that a little bit of a hybrid model.
Yeah. So our big office meetings is definitely the hybrid model. For my new agents, it's actually in person only. We don't let them do Zoom. We do groups of 6 to 10 in the boardroom, and we can have good conversations then.
Great. So let's go back to what you talked about. So 8 to 10 hours of your time to put on a 45-minute training session, plus your staff's time to make a great PowerPoint presentation. Does it get easier? Like after you've done 10, does it get easier? Do you get faster? Or is it, but that's how long it takes to put on really great content.
Yeah. And that's when you do a podcast like this, is like, oh no, brokers are going to know my secrets. But the secret is you just have to work hard. And so I'm confident that I can probably outwork most people. But it does get easier over time. And so my first couple of years, man, I look back, it was hard work, and it still is hard work. But I probably have a base of about 200 educational seminars in my Dropbox file now.
Wow. 200.
So about 200 probably. Yeah. And then what I can do now is I can jump back into 2017 and I can pull up one of my education things from there, and I can tweak it a little bit, and we can put some new graphics on it, and then we can kind of regurgitate it a lot quicker than we could have before. So.
Wow, that's crazy. 200 sessions. Well, good for you. That's a lot. I can't even multiply that by 8 to 10 hours. So let's talk about what elements are important to having a successful training session. Like you've done so many trainings. As you said, there's like 70 training sessions a year that C21 Creekside agents experience. What are some elements that make them successful?
I think they have to be something that actually helps your business. And so in real estate, I said this before, is we kind of grew up with a whole bunch of regulators that run our industry and have no concept of how to sell a house or run a business or be an entrepreneur or deal with the uncertainty of maybe not selling a house next month or next week. And so I feel like if you can really key on how can I actually help your business? How can I help your family life? How can I put boundaries on your time? How can I blank, blank, blank? Agents, they show up to those because they need them, and no one's willing to teach those things.
Right. So finding the real true value of what agents need in order to be successful, provide a better level of service to their clients, everything that they need in order to grow their business. That's great.
Yeah. And I mean, we're from a small town. So selling a house in a small town is different from selling a house in Los Angeles. And so a lot of these national coaches will be like, knock on doors, cold call, all the things that basically I would want to shoot myself if I had to do those things. And so we teach them, like, how do you deal with the database? How do you talk to your friends and family? How do you convert leads? How do you do open houses? Things that actually work when you're talking to a real person. So.
Well, that's great. Thank you for those examples. You know, you had mentioned, like, hopefully that you can inspire some, smaller town brokerages out there that may be tuning in with us. If someone wanted to start a training program, so maybe they've relied on the training that's happening from the national brand or from their, association. If someone wanted to like create their own training program or start their own training program, what tips would you give them?
Call people that are better at it than you. Step one. I
So
always,
you.
well, sure. I mean, there's way smarter people than me out there for sure. I'm just one person. But I think it's important to always be a mentor and be menteed. I don't know if that's a word, but you need someone in your life that you can call and ask questions to. For me, starting my career, it was books for the first part, and now I have other people now where I can call them at any point. It's fantastic. So start with there. So find a brokerage that you look up to, and we'll hopefully share information and just ask them, like, hey, what should I have in my training schedules? And most people will share them with you quickly.
Great. And I guess the key too is not to take on too much, right? It's like anything. It's like, in January, everyone gets back to the gym, they go really hard, and then it's not sustainable. So what would you give, what tips would you give someone if they're just starting off? Like, would you give tips on doing maybe, a couple, like a training session a month, or, do you have any guidance with regards to that?
Yeah, lots of guidance. I mean, and that's why when I say our brokerages run off of education and culture, you have to pick two things. You can't be everything. And Cameron, as a broker in 2015, would have said yes to everything. And now I'm a little better at saying no, but it's still so hard. But if I'm a brand new broker and I'm starting a brokerage, I mean, sit yourself in your office, lock it for 8 hours, and actually just start with a schedule. So maybe it's once every 2 weeks you're going to do education. So fill that time in. Block your time where you're going to prep it, block your time where your staff is going to review it, block the time when you're going to teach it, and then write out the 26 events or whatever that you're going to do. And then you'll follow through with it. You just got to start that plan.
Great. Well, we've got some emergency vehicles outside our building here. If you can hear them, if not, that's great. So thanks so much for all of those tips with regards to, your training program and what other brokerages can do if they want to start a training program for their own brokerage. Let's now talk about your second principle, which is culture. And I know you're big on that. So how important is culture in retaining your existing agents and attracting new agents to your brokerage?
Oh man, a short answer is culture is so important. Sometimes I hate the word culture in a brokerage. It's such a buzzword. Everyone's like, I have the best culture. And I'm like, what does that mean? And so I think culture is different for every brokerage, but your culture is very, very important.
So what does, you talked about that, right? Everyone, and you're right, everyone does throw culture around, right? It becomes a buzzword. I've got the best culture. So what does culture mean to you? Like, if someone said culture, what does that mean to you? If you could describe it.
I know, because some people will say, well, culture is a family. And sometimes I struggle with that because I'm like, well, family hasn't been always the nicest or the most fair to me. And so what kind of culture do my agents deserve? And I think they deserve a culture where they're inspired and it's hardworking and they can learn and be accepted and actually just become a better person and a better realtor. And so our culture really centers around this, the hashtag always learning. Like, how can you be better? How can we be better? How can we increase your business? And yeah, we spend a lot of time around that, and we want to have fun, right? I mean, what's that old saying in real estate? Like, if people know, like, and trust you, then they'll buy from you. And so we actually have to like each other and like what we do in the process, right?
Great. Well, I like that. So your culture really revolves around continuous improvement. Let's call it that. Having fun, even though you're working hard, you want to have fun too. Everyone's in this business because they love it, right? And, and just being accepted, right? And feeling like you're part of a team of like-minded individuals that are all trying to make this real estate industry just better than ever. Okay, now that you've got the vision of what you want your culture to be like, how do you create that culture?
Yeah, that's where the fun happens. All the good stories happen, I guess. I mean, what does it say? They say like love is spelled T-I-M-E. And so if you think of your culture as something you have to like put love into, you got to spend time at it. So in our office, obviously we're going to have our weekly office meetings. Pre-pandemic, we would have a happy hour in our office once every 2 weeks where I'd buy Budweiser and some chips just so we could hang out and kind of talk with each other. We do 4 company events a year. And so real estate is a family business. People are lying to you if they don't think that's true. Your business affects your kids, your wife, your parents, everyone. And so those 4 events a year, we invite the whole family out. Like bring your spouse, bring your kids, bring your grandpa if you want. And I got mad at my assistant. We spent way too much money on our summer party this year. But we brought out an axe thrower and a bouncy castle and a little water slide and a charcuterie table because it's, Instagrammable. And we have a great time. We really care about that stuff.
Wow. So you get the families involved with the realtors. And as you say, it's so many people support the realtors, right? You got kids and everything, and then you get to know people a little bit deeper, right? Than just at the office. You get to know their family, their background, and their kids and everything. So that sounds a lot of fun.
Yeah. And if an agent calls me and they're bringing me an offer and I know their wife and their kids and I enjoy working with them, of course, I'm going to be biased to working with them. You're going to be excited to work with that deal. And that's what I want in our office.
Right. I also know part of your culture revolves around giving back to the community. So I want to talk a little bit about some of your community initiatives because you're doing some amazing things. So can you tell me about some of your most current fundraising initiatives?
Yeah, good question. I got tingles. I love this stuff. Life is just so much bigger than us sometimes. And our first 2 years opening a brokerage, I was inundated and we didn't have any time to kind of get into this part of what I wanted to do. But probably in year 3, we started something called Creekside Cares. And I think we have a social responsibility to give back. I think we're completely blessed in what we do. And so me being able to coach realtors brings a sense of self-satisfaction, but helping other people who need help is actually just enormous. And so we started this thing called Creekside Cares a couple of years ago. And I think what you're trying to get at is probably we just did this run to BC Children's Hospital. And so, last year already, we had a new agent. He literally signed up in our office as a 19-year-old. He was just finishing up beating cancer. And so he was in BC Children's Hospital for most of his high school years. At the time, my wife was just diagnosed with breast cancer. And we thought, you know what, why don't we do something cool? And we're going to go run from Chilliwack to Vancouver and raise money for BC Children's Hospital. And it's one of the examples in life where it's like, it was just so much bigger than us. And we thought by running, we were going to make a difference. But in the process, we raised $125,000. When we got there, we had about 100 people at our brokerage cheering us on when we went to go start the run. When we got to BC Children's Hospital, there was, 50 or 60 people there. But the thing that I underestimated is there was kids in the hospital that couldn't come out that were holding up signs for us. And they were telling their parents that they were running laps in their bedroom of the hospital so that when they get healthy, they want to be like Cameron and Jaden one day and run to Vancouver. And so, yeah, we got to inspire young kids to go beat cancer and live life, which was way, way cooler than I ever thought. So.
Well, you know what, Cameron, and that gives me tingles. Like, that's just such an amazing story. And, for those people that don't know how far it is to run from Chilliwack, BC to the Vancouver Children's Hospital, it's over 100 kilometers. Do you have an exact number there?
Yeah, so I ran with Jaden in our office, who's one of the most inspiring guys I know. So he ran the full 103 kilometers. I had to get on the bike for a little bit, so I only managed, I think, 72 or 73 kilometers. Yeah, right. I actually tried to run 5 kilometers yesterday, just so it killed me. So I underestimated how much of a feat it was to run that far. But yeah, it was a long run and truly incredible.
Well, and Cameron, I'm a runner too. And when I heard that you were going to do it, I'm like, okay, wow, that's great. Anyways, congratulations. I know that's just, just an example of all the things you do throughout the year. So, you talked a little bit about Creekside Cares, and I love that name. So because it really kind of sums up really what you're trying to do, right, is give back to the community. So do you support multiple nonprofit organizations with under Creekside Cares, or how does that work? Give us a little bit more detail of what that looks like.
Yeah, good question. I mean, and this is where maybe from a big brand perspective, like you guys might not like it as much, but we really try to keep it local. We are still a local brokerage who's in a local community. And so we know the stories and the families in our community. We really want to help them. And so if you walked into our office right now, there's going to be a Christmas tree at our locations. And on the Christmas tree are ornaments of families that we want to support. And so someone can take an ornament off of our tree and go buy them gifts and food for this Christmas season. And that's just one example. And so we want to do things as locally as possible and impact the people in our community.
Well, that's a really great idea. Now, do you get your other realtors involved in, what type of initiatives that you do, or is this something that's just, been going on for a while and you do similar things every single year? How do you decide on what organizations to support?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we have some of the most generous realtors in this office that I've ever seen. Like when we raised that $125,000 for BC Children's Hospital, like I cannot believe how much the realtors in our office gave to it. It's actually mind blowing. We give them all an option on every one of their deals to donate $21 to the Creekside Cares Fund. And then we set up a committee, and then that committee decides where we're going to put the money and what we're going to do with it. So, I mean, pre-pandemic, our goal was to go down to Mexico and try and build a house for a family. And then, COVID hit and changed our world a little bit. And so we've really stayed local in any way possible.
Well, again, a big thank you from all of us here at head office to all of your realtors and all the people in the Chilliwack community that, continue to support all the initiatives that you did. Really, it's quite amazing. So, I know that when we started talking about this community involvement, you said, oh, that's, this is the stuff that I love. This is the stuff that I wanted to get to. What drives that passion to give back to the community?
Oh, that's a hard question. I mean, life is just so much bigger than ourselves, and it's bigger than money, and it's bigger than some of those things. And I think there's just a satisfaction of being able to help other people. And a lot of realtors get into it because they'll sit in my office and like, why do you want to be a realtor? They're like, well, I want to help people. And so I think naturally that's our inclination. And then when you get to be a part of things that are bigger than yourself, you're like, yeah, that's the good stuff. And so it's just fun being a part of it. Great.
Well, again, thank you so much for your efforts. I know that, the last, I'm going to say, coming up in 2 years, right? COVID, it'll be 2 years in March when it really started happening. The world has changed so much over the last, 18 to 20 months. Has your leadership changed? Like, how has your leadership changed, or has it even changed during this time?
My leadership will keep evolving for my whole life, I hope. So my goal in life is to be teachable, and I want to keep learning things. And so I look back even a couple of years ago, I'm like, what? People followed a wingnut like me into this brokerage? What were they thinking? And so I really try to be a better leader all of the time. I'm never going to be perfect, and I suck at it sometimes. But I'm always trying is kind of the point I want to do. And I think if that's your mentality and your agents see that, they'll run their business the same, where they're not going to be perfect, but they're always going to try.
And what are some tips? Like, again, you started basically a startup brokerage, you and a couple agents, now 113 agents. So you've gone through that. You built it up yourself, of course, with the help of your support team. But what tips would you give other owners who wanted to grow their brokerage? If they're saying, 2022 is an important year. I want to actually take my brokerage to the next level. What are some tips that you would give them if they wanted to grow their brokerage?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing is like, what is your why? Why do you want to grow your brokerage? What's the reason for it? I would say find a really good mentor in your life, someone you can look up to and ask questions. I mean, me starting this brokerage, if I look back at some of the struggles, is like, I didn't have a family member in the real estate brokerage business to be like, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, uncle, how do I do this? Or when things happened, I didn't know if they were normal or not. I just thought, wow, I'm experiencing something else. But I mean, this would be my shout out to Mike LaPrairie. He's been my mentor managing broker from Vancouver. And even though we don't talk a lot, it's fantastic to know I have another guy in my corner who's done it for a long time. or even I'll say the Fulton sisters, I'll shoot them a text and be like, hey, question about this. And so if you want to grow, you need to surround yourself with other people who have done it before or are doing it at the same time.
Great. Well, I think that's a nice to have those people to call, or just, bounce ideas off of, right? And kind of share best practices. We talked a little bit about, gosh, if I would have known this back when I started, knowing what you know now, what are some words of wisdom that you wish someone would have told you before becoming a brokerage owner?
Oh, man, I probably wouldn't have listened if they would have told me anything. It's way harder than you think. There's less money in it than you think. I think a lot of brokers get jealous of some of their agents because their agents will be making more money than them, but that's okay. So I was fortunate enough to know that my why in starting a brokerage was because I cared about people and I wanted to coach and teach and mentor. And so if you're going to make less money, but get to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, that's really, really cool. But if I look back at this 6-year journey now already, it's hard work. There is a lot of no's. There's a lot of rejection. But I think the struggle makes life better. I really do. And so I'm very grateful for it.
Well, and, there's, as you said, that it's hard work, right? And I'm sure that you've experienced ups and downs over those 6.5 years. Can you share with us what you think one of your biggest challenge has been since owning a brokerage and how you overcame that?
Oh man, I don't know. There's a few. It's funny. This is not necessarily the biggest challenge, but when I first opened a brokerage, I had several people in my life tell me that I was going to fail. I had a broker in town take me for lunch and said I was going to fail. I had family members say it, which was probably the best thing that could have happened. It put a chip on my shoulder, and it was like I'll prove you wrong kind of a thing, which I was fortunate for. But I think one of the hardest things that they don't teach you is that you like your agents, or you love your agents, or they're part of who you are more than they even know. And so in the first couple of years, when an agent would leave my office, it hurt. It was painful because I put my heart and soul into my brokerage, and then they would leave, and not like most of the time on good terms, but not always. And that was hard. It would keep me awake on a Friday night, like, who's going to leave my office? And no one ever told me that would be a part of the struggle. And now I still struggle with it, but now there's confidence of like, this is what we do, and this is how we help. And if you're part of it, great. And if you're not, that's okay too. So don't know if I answered your question, but. Yeah,
no, you did. And I know that it becomes personal, like even, at any time that it just becomes so personal. So, you've had struggles, you've had, ups and downs. It's a lot of hard work. We talked back in 2017 that you want to be number one in your market. What has fueled your drive to becoming number one? If you were to reflect back on yourself, like really, what drives you every day? Why do you wake up in the morning? What motivates you to achieve what you've achieved?
Yeah, that's a great question. You asked me that a couple of weeks ago, and I put some notes down. I'm like, I don't know what the answer is. But I think I innately do know the answer. So in my early 20s, there was this magazine. It was like National Geographic Adventure magazine. And at the top of the magazine, it said, dream it, plan it, do it. And so that was kind of my moment where I realized that, like, if you make every day count, you can do really cool things. And so life is an adventure, and we get to be a part of really cool things. And if you put the work and effort and time in every day to actually doing something, you're going to get somewhere really cool. And so a lot of my motivation is like, the details aren't sexy, and waking up early, like, isn't sexy. And people make fun of me for saying that, but like, the daily grind turns into really cool things over a career. And I love seeing them. Like, I got to be a part of a fantastic run in a big brokerage and mentoring people and helping change lives. And I feel like regular people don't always get to be a part of that. So that really drives me now.
Oh, excellent. That's great to know. And, as we wrap up here, I'm going to ask you this question is, what's the biggest challenge that you've ever faced in your life? It doesn't have to be within, your last 6.5 years being a brokerage owner, that ended up being a blessing in disguise.
Oh man, you're going deep. Hey, I'll kind of jump back to it a little. Like, I think the fear of failure was really hard in my life. And so I feel like at a younger age, I had people that said that I couldn't do it. And it was hard on me And part of you wants to believe it. You're like, yeah, maybe I'm not good enough and I'm just a regular person. But that's actually turned out to be the biggest blessing in my life, is like, I'm just a regular person, like a lot of us. And if regular people try and read and surround themselves with mentors and they get menteed or whatever it is on the other side, life can be really cool. And so, yeah, I mean, those people saying that, you're just average, or you're not good enough, or you're not going to make it, that turned out to be one of the biggest blessings in my life, probably.
Wow, that's great. Well, I appreciate you going deep with me. So is there anything else you want to share with, our listeners, any other tips to brokerage owners, anything that maybe we haven't discussed in this conversation?
Yeah, I think, oh man, I get excited about this stuff, but like, do things that scare you. I think a lot of people are scared to open a brokerage, and it is intimidating, and they might fail, and that's okay. But I think you got to get out there and do things that scare you, and then get into the grind and do it every single day, and really cool things will happen. And I would say further, surround yourself with people that you want to be like. And so when I talk about culture in my office, I get to walk into the bullpen in the mornings, and I have guys that are trying to beat me to the office now. And it's like, I'm surrounded by awesome guys and gals that want to try and outwork me, or try and outlearn me, or try and out whatever. And it's not even verbal communication. It's just being around those people that make you better. Yeah, so I love that stuff. That's really fun.
That's great. Well, and with those type of people, and when you get like that, you can feel the energy, right? It's like, it's such positive energy that makes everybody just better.
Yeah, I got this young guy in my office, and he's door knocking 3 hours a day. And I'm like, that would kill my soul. And he's like, I got to do it 3 hours a day. And he's in the bullpen probably behind me right now. And I think he's on listing number 3 in the last couple of weeks as a brand new agent, and he's killing it. Wow. And so without him knowing it, he's influencing me. And I'm like, wow, I can learn something from this guy. Like, he's out hustling and pushing. And I don't know, man, that's the good stuff in life.
Well, at Century 21, we say relentless, right? And definitely he's relentless. So that's great. Cameron, if anybody wanted to have a conversation with you afterwards, or they had another question after listening to this podcast, how can people get a hold of you?
Google me.
And you got your phone number too, right in your background.
I was going to say the office phone number is my background. My staff made it, so we're very well branded today. But yeah, you can email me, you can text me, you can direct message me, you can do anything. I'll get a hold of you. And I love helping. And so if anyone has any questions, that's my world. I'd love to help in any way possible.
Great. Well, you've been just a phenomenal guest. Thank you so much, Cameron. Again, congratulations on all the success that you've seen. Congratulations to your realtors. Keep giving us all you got, and we really appreciate your commitment and your hard work and your support in the brand. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Chiyoko. I mean, it's fun having a brand behind you that's the same thing, putting in the effort, putting in like the time and the grind, and it's evident. We have fun with it, right? We got a younger crew coming into Century 21, and I feel like we're growing as a brand across the country, and it's fun. I get to be a part of something bigger than myself, even through Century 21. So it's good. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thanks again, and you're right. It's super fun. So take care, Cameron. Thanks so much.
See you later.